We talk a lot about spey fishing on this podcast. Some of us fish super short spey rods. Some of us fish super long spey rods. You may be into steelhead salmon or trout, or maybe even something more exotic. But do you know the history of how spey got its name and the origins of how fishing has evolved at this location? Today we have the man who fishes the historic spey rivers of the UK, and today you're going to get some of his best tips on swinging for trout and salmon. This is the Wet Fly Swing Podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. Hey, how's it going? I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing Podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers in the U.S. and around the world than just about anyone out there. Chris Hague, elite fly casting instructor and guide out of the UK, is going to take a deep dive into how he does spey. You're going to find out where to find wild rainbows in the UK, why Scotland has seen better salmon days and the place he's traveling to now, and how to do a snake roll and why you should get more proficient at this cast this year. Plus, you will find out about this secret place where Atlantic salmon are super abundant and the reason why you should do this trip and how you can put it together this year. We are heading to the birthplace of fly fishing. Let's find out how they do it on the other side of the pond. Here he is, Chris Hague from Fly Fishing with chrishague.co.uk. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, very good, Dave. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on here today. I think you are covering some species that everybody, I think, has heard about and loves. I mean, we've been talking quite a bit about Atlantic salmon recently, I think brown trout, and there's a number of other species. And you're up in a part of the world that, is a little distance from us, but we definitely have listeners in that area, and we're hoping to put together some trips, in your area. So, and with the focus is, I guess, the UK, right? Is that roughly you kind of cover it all out there?
Yeah, so I'm based in Yorkshire, so I do a lot in the UK. I've just come back from a salmon fishing in Scotland this week. I'll come back from Iceland a couple of weeks ago. So I'm in and out of Iceland quite a lot, running destination trips and courses out there. And I run spey casting workshops in the UK, individual lessons. I teach people to mentor people to become instructors. So I try to cover the full package from beginners to instructors, and also offering destination trips and courses.
Yeah, perfect. And it sounds like, and then you do some guiding for all these species? Yeah,
so guide on the Peacock Water in Derbyshire, which is the only river in the UK that's got wild rainbows in it. It's not it's a limestone water. It's not a chalk stream, but it's very, very clear. And it's upstream dry fly fishing. It's a superb piece of water, but the only way you can fish it is if you book a night and stay in the Peacock Hotel the night before. But it is something totally different because it's the only wild rainbow trout, river in the UK. And I think they were shipped in from America in the late 1800s. There's a non-stocking policy on that river, so everything's totally wild.
Gotcha. Wow. So yeah, rainbow trout, wild rainbow trout, that's something definitely I think, we don't think about a lot over there, but yeah, since 1880. Now, do you fish that differently than you fish some of the other chalk streams when you're fishing those rainbows?
So I tend to, my local river that I fish is the River Tweed to Chatsworth, but you're not allowed to guide on there. But that is multiple methods, but only one fly. You can only use one fly until it comes to grayling season, then you can use two flies. But when you're fishing on the Peacock, it's totally upstream dry fly only. So there's no Euro nymphing, no streamers, no anything. It's just specifically targeting rising fish.
Right. This is awesome. Well, we're gonna touch on a number of these species as we go here, but let's take it back real quick just into your fly fishing. Maybe talk about how you first got into it, and then what's your first memory there.
My first fish I ever caught was on a cane rod which my granddad built, and I was 5 at the time. And I came into course fishing first because where I lived, I was fortunate that I lived probably 200 metres from a canal, 300 metres from a river, and probably half a mile from a reservoir. So we had loads of opportunities to fish, but not specifically fly fishing. But as a family, we used to go on holiday to Wales, And I used to see the guys there salmon fishing for these fish that were jumping up these waterfalls, and I was just totally amazed by it. And that's the only thing I ever wanted to do in fishing was fly fish. And now I do everything I touch, every fish I catch is on the fly.
Right. And then have you been guiding for quite a while? When did all that become kind of, the bulk of what you do?
Yeah, so probably about 20 years ago, something like that, when I started taking my exams, slightly less than that. I took my entry-level game angling instructor certificate, and I'll never forget on the day when I passed, this was single-handed, the guy said to me, "Your knowledge is excellent. If I could have passed your advanced today, I would have done." And I only intended to do the entry-level, but when he said that to me, I thought, you know what, I might do that. I might take my advanced. So I took my advanced. That went well. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to do my double-handed as well. So I took my entry-level double-handed, took my my advanced double-handed, and then I decided to take my FFI, Fly Fishers International, which obviously is based in America. And I took my masters. I actually took it on Florida Keys, and I was assessed by a guy called Gordy Hill. So I took my masters single-handed there, and then I took my double-handed masters with the FFI as well. So I acquired all these certificates, and then it just seemed to come naturally. I started with a company called Guideline. I worked for Guideline for 10 years as a pro staff member, testing kit on rivers and feedback and things like that, representing that brand. And then it's probably about 2.5 years ago, Mackenzie Fly Fishing approached me to see if I'd become part of their design team. So I'm now involved in rods, lines, everything that comes under that umbrella. So it's just grown. And then as soon as I passed my exams, I started teaching and guiding. So it's just evolved, Dave, really. It's just gone from strength to strength, if I'm honest.
Right. And so this is the FFI on the certification. So is that how it works? There's not really anything in the UK where you can get the certification for two-hand? Or talk about that. What's the difference between where you're at versus, over in the US?
No, we have got organisations over here. So we've got organisations like AAPGAI and Game Angling Instructors Association, which I was a member of. And that's where they were the first places I took my exams. But I just saw there were a few guys in that organisation that had got the masters, and they decided to take the FFI exams because FFI is internationally recognised. So if I went to Australia and America or wherever, having that certification, I would be recognised, where the AAPGAI and Game Angling Instructors Association is recognised in the UK. So I wanted to be recognised internationally. And again, it's gone from strength to strength for me. I got them examinations. I've mentored people to become instructors, and also I've become a level 3 assessor. So I've travelled around the world assessing other people to become instructors. So yeah, it's just evolved. It's just grown and grown.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So you actually travel around to assess like people that are doing what you've already done, and then you can assess them and determine whether they pass the test essentially.
Yeah, I think there's around approximately 15 level 3 assessors in the FFI worldwide. That means that assessor at level 3 can assess any exam what you can do with the FFI, and I managed to get myself into that bracket. So yeah. And you do both single hand and two-hand casting? Are you doing equal amounts of all that? Yeah, because I fish 12 months a year, so I'm constantly flicking between single-handed rods and double-handed rods, switch rods. In fact, when I'm fishing salmon, sometimes I'll fish single-handed, switch rod, shorter double-handed rods, longer double-handed rods. All depends on the situation that I'm fishing, the size of the river. So yeah, that's what will dictate which rod I'm using. But what a lot of people don't understand is the mechanics is they're more or less the same. The mechanics between spey casting a single rod, handed rod, and a double-handed rod is very, very similar. The only difference is we use two hands on a double-handed rod, and we're using one hand on a single-handed rod.
Yeah, no, and I think we definitely would love to talk about that a little bit today, just on, maybe we could start with the spey or, the two-handed. And I guess salmon, are you doing two-handed for more than just the salmon, or are you doing it for trout as well?
I occasionally use a trout spey rod. for trout. A little short double-handed rod, which is just under 10 foot. And I really enjoy swinging wet flies on that. But the bulk of my double-handed rod fishing is done chasing salmon.
Yeah. Okay. And we've done a number of episodes, we've done quite a bit on steelhead and now quite a bit on Atlantic salmon, but a lot of it in Canada and kind of Eastern, Canada, that part of the world. But where you're at, maybe describe that. What does that look like for, talking about a salmon trip? Are the runs pretty good? Like, describe maybe if somebody wanted to learn more about that. How does that compare to other areas around the world?
In the UK, we've had a bad time with salmon over the last few years, and there's no great improvement at this moment. I've just fished the River Tweed in Scotland, fished for 2 days, and managed to get a 13-pound codfish, but I worked extremely hard for it. And there were a few fishing systems, but nothing compared to like when you go to places like Iceland. It's just it's tough. It's tough, and one of the things I can't understand, Dave, is why we haven't looked at a ranching policy like they do in Iceland. If you see what they do in Iceland, it's unbelievable. Where you catch a fish in Iceland, and if it's above a certain size, it goes into an holding pen, and then every few days they'll come and empty this holding pen. And I think they don't need that many fish, but they take 250 females a year and roughly 50 males to ranch. They literally release between 600 and 700,000 smalls back in every year.
Oh, wow. So they have a huge hatchery program up there.
Yeah. Not on every river, but the two biggest rivers out there, West Wrangell and East Wrangell, they're both rivers are ranched. And the size of the fish and the quality of the fish and the fight that they put up is unbelievable. So for me, it definitely has no effect on the genetics.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so I didn't realize that in Iceland. So you do have the wild populations, but you also have hatchery fish up there, and those are some of the best rivers with the up there. Is that kind of how it looks?
Yeah, West Wrangell and East Wrangell probably come out 2 top rivers for catch rates every year. I think they'll literally put approximately 700,000 back into the west, and probably around 650 into the east. But the return on those fish is literally 1%. And so, when people say they're going to start an hatchery in this country, if you're only going to put 30,000 back into an hatchery and expect great results, you can forget it, because it's just not going to happen. So, like I said, the fish are so strong. I don't know if it's because in Iceland, they're not travelling that far to Greenland, to the feeding grounds, or whether it's the quality of the water because it's crystal clear, highly oxygenated, great flow, but they're just so strong. You bump into a 8-pound fish in Iceland and you think you've got a monster on your hands. Right.
So that's just in the most of the UK. That's just currently not the case as far as run.
We're having it. Some rivers have done slightly better this year, but nowhere near the numbers what you'll get in Canada or Iceland, and that's why there's a hell of a lot of people traveling these days. Our field trips are every year to hosted trips to Iceland. So,
oh, you do?
Yeah. And it's not too far from you guys either, Iceland, is it? I see a lot of Americans coming to Iceland to fish.
Yeah, it's kind of right there. Yeah, it seems like it's almost kind of in the middle for both.
Yeah.
both of us.
Yeah.
And we've talked Iceland a little bit here in the past, so that is definitely a destination that we want to get out to. So when people are coming to you for, if it's not a hosted trip, if it's kind of more in your home range, what are they coming to you for fishing?
I do spey casting lessons, not only spey casting, but overhead I do single-handed, double-handed workshops, spey casting workshops, and I do certain guided days, maybe on trout, pike, things like that. But for me to get to salmon, I'm looking at 3 hours to get to an half decent salmon river from myself.
3 hours, okay. Well, what's the spey? What does your kind of two-handed setup look like typically for salmon?
So, as I've just said before, we're on the River Tweed on a very iconic beat this week called the Junction. So, and on there, and in Iceland, my go-to rod is much shorter now. It's a 12'7" Mackenzie FX2. It's made from carbon and graphene, super light, but very stable rod tip recovery. And that's paired up with just a solid, I've got a Lamson reel on that, and a shooting edge system. I love multi-tip line setups, Dave, because there's so many people be fishing down a river and they'll get to a piece where they need to change line or tip. And if they're not using a tip system, they'll continue fishing through that pool with the same line, and they might be fishing over top of fish. Whereas if you are using a multi-tip system, you can adjust from anything from a floating tip using a hitch fly, or, you know, 1-3 tip, 3-5, 5-7, really down into tungsten tips. And I carry multiple tips. I carry IMOs, MOs, everything. So that just one line, I carry a floating line and a sinking body and multiple tips, and I travel light, and that means I'm not pumping a big rod round all day. It's super light, 12'7". I'll cast 1,000,000 miles. I can cover all water, and I can quickly adjust depth that I'm fishing at. So that's probably my go-to setup. There's times when I will go longer on rods, but it would have to be a big river, something like River Tweed, or, you know, where I'd need a little bit more hang time.
Right. So the River Tweed is kind of more of a, it's not a big river.
It is big in places, but what you get in the UK, Dave, is you'll get gillies on every beat, and part of your day will be spent fishing from the bank or wading, and then the other part, you'll be in a boat. So when you're in the boat, they're basically taking you to the hotspots. So you don't need to be casting a long way. But yeah, I mean, these 12'7" rods now, they'll cast 1,000,000 miles if your technique's good. And why would you want to? The other thing is, shorter rods require a shorter stroke, and shorter lines. So if you've got your back up to a bank or you're up to a tree line and you've only got a short line, you only need to create a small size D-loop, so you're not fighting vegetation all day. Whereas if you've got a longer rod in your hands, probably we'll have a longer line on, even if it's a shooting head, and it requires a little bit more room behind you, so it's not as user-friendly in tight situations.
This year, I ventured into the heart of eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory, where the fish were larger than life and the waters held the secrets of the best fly fishing out west. With crystal clear rivers like the Henry's Fork and the South Fork of the Snake, and enough lakes to keep you going all year long, make your way to Yellowstone Teton territory and embark on a journey to one of North America's finest fly fishing destinations. It's time to experience eastern Idaho for yourself and support this podcast at the same time. Discover Smitty's Fly Box for premium flies. Their monthly subscription service delivers expertly crafted flies and materials tailored to your fishing environment. Boasting over 30 years of experience, Smitty's is your trusted source for a diverse range of flies. Enhance your fishing experience and make life easier with their carefully created selections. You can subscribe right now at smittysflybox.com and join a community of passionate anglers. Are you seeing, and I mean, out there, just say you're fishing the River Tweed or any of the other ones in the UK, are you seeing people still with some of the longer 14, 15-foot rods, or more people, going smaller?
Yeah, 100%. The thing is now, if you go in a shop in the UK, you're struggling to buy a long-bellied spray line because everything's going shorter. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes I get, I'll see people come for lessons and they'll roll up with a 15-foot rod and then they'll have a Skagit on it. And it's just not designed to go together. I mean, they'll be just skipping their anchors out into bushes behind, and it's hard to change a lot of people. The thing that, 15-foot rod's the way forward, but I would say 14-foot is the new 15-foot. And definitely most people now, very accomplished casters, will be down into even switch rods. There's times when I'm using an 11'2" switch rod.
Okay, and then in your line on that 12'7", are you kind of running more like a Scandi type line, or what's that look like?
I think we're in the process of designing a new line for Mackenzie's flagship. But I think what happened, Dave, were Skagits came on the scene and Scandis came on the scene sort of at a similar time. And Skagits were obviously really short, designed to fight through heavy tips, big flies. Scandis were more designed for better presentation, but still were relatively short, but not as short as a Skagit. what I say now is there's a new range of lines, what drop in the middle, and I call them hybrids. And these hybrids will do everything that a Skagit will do. They'll throw a T17, but they'll also present better as well. So it's like as if they've merged the two into one. So hybrid still super short, and maybe looking at around 23-foot head and tip, but they present much better than what Skagits did.
Yeah, that's right, because the Skagit typically is just kind of like the giant fire hose. It still works, but it's not as delicate, right?
No. And the thing is, if I'm going down a pool, if I can only use airborne anchor casts like snake rolls, single space, things like that, I'll try and pick unless it's really fast rapids, I'll try and pick a pool apart like I would a trout pool and try and be as silent as possible. These fish are clever. Some people I see burst into water, splash, set up, and you might as well ping them something an email saying, I'm just coming down this pool with Red Francis. If you won't mind taking it, I'd be ultra happy. You did that. The start. So you've got it. Stealth for me is a massive
stealth. That's all. And I love that you mentioned Lamson Reel. Definitely, we work with Lamson quite a bit, and they have some good stuff. I'm curious, what is the reel model you use for Lamson?
The Guru.
Oh yeah, the Guru.
Yeah. Nice reel. The reason I bought it because Mackenzie's doing the reels at the moment, and it's got like an orange on the reel. The drag, and Mackenzie's rods black and orange and white writings.
Oh right,
it's super cool. There
you go. And what's in the Mackenzie? Is that a brand? I'm not familiar with that brand. Is that a brand?
Yeah. Mackenzie, Scott Mackenzie, you were world champion distance caster, Scott. He started a company a number of years ago. It's just going from strength to strength. Now we've got fantastic range of rods. The latest were the FX2s. That were the first project that I were ever involved on, along with Scott, Ian Kirk, Andrew Toft, and myself. That's the design team. And they were the first company ever to use graphene in the rods. And we're on a second generation graphene now. And I think these rods have just won Best in Testing 3 at top magazines in UK at the moment. So sell a lot of single landing rods as well. And we've got a clothing range come out this year as well. So yeah, it's all moving at Mackenzie's at the moment.
Right. And is the graphene, we haven't talked a ton about that, but then how is that different from like the graphite?
So we still have carbon in rods, but they're laid with graphene. Graphene's the strongest material known to man, apparently. There were 2 professors at Manchester University won an award for coming up with it, and we've even got it in his clothing. And I just feel it on the rods. The action of the rods is more mid to tip, but it helps the rod tip of a rapid rod tip recovery, which generates an high line speed. But for me, it adds stability. You never see a line ripple down that FX2 rod. It's just so clean when it comes to stop position. So, yeah, it's been great to work with, and it's been really interesting stuff.
Right, and they have the full line of Spey and single hand, kind of a little bit of everything.
Oh yeah, full rods. Yeah. And then we're adding to it all the time. Next year we'll have tight line infant rods. We're working. I've just been in Maldives this year, and I went to Dubai fishing saltwater last year and took some prototypes out there, and they're going to be like pike, so they're going to be predator and saltwater, and they'll be out for 2025 as well.
Nice. You mentioned, so going back to the last trip, you actually landed a fish on the River Tweed when you were, is that where you landed that last fish?
Yeah. This week, literally just come back. 13-pound codfish, probably 12, 13 pound, probably been in system, maybe about a week, probably about 2 weeks, just starting to show colour.
Yeah. What was that? Maybe take us there to that fish. What were you were using that 12-foot-7 rod?
12-foot-7, and I were actually fishing off the back of the boat with the gillies up there, and they don't use engines, they're rowing you, so they're constantly rowing you to hold you in position. Them guys must have arms like...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they work up to... They definitely don't need to go to the gym when they've finished their work, that's the certainty. So, yeah, and... fly would just swinging around, and it just seemed like one of them days when you do matter what you did. I chopped and changed depth, chopped and changed fly, and it just come in and it swung right off back end of the boat, nearly straight behind the boat, and it were a really super gentle take. It didn't hit it, it just sort of hoovered it up, felt the weight, lifted into it, and it was nice to fish that beat. The beat what I'm just talking to you about, I actually videoed it. It's on my social media. I put the drone up at the morning and flew it around the beat, and that piece of river, probably about 20 years ago, when they used to landline fish before breakfast, and it was about £1,000 a day to fish it at that time because it was just such a good beat.
Oh, really?
And you can see our stocks are depleted, and it's roughly now probably paying about £300 a day to fish it now.
Oh, wow. So its prices of paying has gone down.
Yeah. They just can't dictate that money. That were back in Alcyon days. I think they used to be, it's a six rod beat, and for 6 days, I think it used to be £36,000 if you wanted to buy it as a full package. So, mega expensive. But now they just can't dictate them prices just because of state of fishing in the UK, to be honest.
Yeah. Are there still in those areas is like the brown trout, or are those still in there doing well?
We still get runs of sea trout in there as well. I don't know why you don't seem to bump into them as much, but apparently they've got decent sized brown trout and grayling on the River Tweed as well. So yeah, these rivers are still holding them types of fish, but not in massive numbers. But nobody notices the decline date because they're not particularly fishing for them.
Oh,
they're more or less targeting salmon.
Gotcha. So if we were, putting together a trip to the UK, and I mean, there's a lot, different areas there, but what would be your recommendation now if we were looking at something for next year to kind of maybe go there for a week or two? Where would you be telling somebody to go?
Yeah, so trout. There's some fantastic rivers in the UK, chalk streams down south. Where I am, Derbyshire has some great rivers, but it's getting access to them. You know what I mean? Because a lot of members only. Yeah. The water that I'm on at Chatsworth House, it's an absolute stunning piece of water. It's got a massive stately home on it, but there's probably a 4-year waiting list.
Oh, wow.
You can get on with a member. So if you wanted to fish it, I can take you on as a guest spot day, but you can't just turn up and pay. You know what I mean? So that's the problem with UK is access to water. You can book on through salmon in rivers in Scotland, but you'll be going through companies like FishPal, but a lot of the top beats get booked up really fast. But again, because we've struggled so much for fish in the UK, there's a hell of a lot of people travel from our country to Iceland, Norway. Obviously, Russia's no at the moment, but there used to be a big following for Russia from the UK. Yeah. Yeah, I love Iceland. The reason I like Iceland because I can actually be on a river in Iceland faster than I can be on a river in Scotland.
Oh, wow.
You see, it's probably 7 hours for me to get to Spey, which is it is a fantastic piece of fly water. And anybody who comes to UK, if you can get on a beat, that is a great river to fish.
Which one is that one?
The River Spey, where it all started with a Spey cast.
Yeah, that's it. That's the River Spey.
Yeah, so that's where it all started, way back in the late 1800s. Alexander Grant and other guys developed Spey casting at that time. So yeah, that'd be one box that I'd want to tick if I were coming out from another country to fish.
That's it. That river, and that's up in Scotland.
Yeah. 7 hours from me. So that's what I mean. For me to get to the River Spey, I can be on a plane from Manchester, which is an hour away, and I can be on water in Iceland before I can have got to the River Spey.
Oh, right. So are you talking, would you be driving from your location up there?
Yeah, I'd drive up there. Because I'd have my kit as well, so I'd need everything up there with me. I mean, Scotland's a stunning place, and it's definitely somewhere. I do enjoy going back. I've been back this week, and I've enjoyed being back. But I don't expect to catch the numbers of fish that you're going to catch and the quality of fish that you're going to catch in Iceland, if I'm honest.
Right, yeah. Iceland is just kind of right now is a whole level above anything else.
Yeah. And I don't know why, I've said it before, I don't know why we don't have a ranching program in the UK, but the thing is out there, Dave, the farmers who own the land, they need it to be a success because it's part of their livelihood. So they rent the land to the lodgers and that, so they've got access to go and fishing it. So they want it to be a success. So they actually help with the picking the fish up, collecting them, taking them to be stripped, etc. for ranching program. But in the UK, there's a lot of, when you drive onto some stunning beaches in the UK, on numerous rivers, a lot of these families are super, super wealthy. And if they're not interested in fishing, I don't think they're not going to put that sort of money into, they don't care. So it's not their passion. They've earned their money other way. Shooting, they probably have big shooting syndicates which bring more money in. So, I just don't see it ever happening in the UK, if I'm honest.
Well, that makes sense. What is I want to go back to the River Spey. Do you know a little bit of the history on, just kind of how that all began back? You mentioned the 1880s. Do you kind of...
Yeah. It were, the guy who, the gentleman, there were numerous people up there, obviously. They're fishing a fantastic river, and if you see the Spey, it's heavily tree-lined and banked. So they were obviously fishing and seeing fish moving or lying in pools, but couldn't get to them because... At that time, they probably only had an overhead cast in their armoury. So they came up with the single Spey, the cast that were designed to be used in an upstream wind that requires minimal backspace, and you'll get an angle change approximately maximum 100 degrees across the river. And they came up with a double Spey for a downstream wind. And then that opened a whole new ball game up to them, you know what I mean? There were more fish available to them because they could cover the water far, far more. But the guy at that time who was probably most famous was Alexander Grant, and he made some, I can't remember what numbers are now, but Scott Mackenzie actually broke the record a number of years ago, but his record stood for 100 years, and he made that cast with a 21-foot green art rod where he'd actually made himself, and he also built musical instruments, and he used to had a tuning like a harp thing where he used to a vibration tool for making musical instruments, and he used to make his blanks and then use that tool and test the vibration of the blanks, and that's how he made his rods. That's the Alexander Grant vibration method, and they were made from green art wood, and that's how it all started. Really, that's where the history of Spey casting started, and how the rods started, and how we began to use Spey casting in the art of salmon fishing.
Right, and that's where, he used a 21-foot rod.
A 21-foot rod, yeah. And you know how I said to you that we are using really short shooting heads now? I can't remember exactly what the distance were, but he lifted a full line, and he formed a D-loop behind, and then delivered the full line. He didn't shoot any line; it were huge length line. And he weren't actually a big guy. He was quite a slight apparently. So, real skill set. Real nice skills. Yeah.
So when did and then eventually got into more of the 14-foot, 15-foot. When did was that just a slow transition? And then when did the transition to more of the shorter stuff start happening?
So there were a gentleman called Gordon, and Scandinavian guy. And I think he was pioneers for short rod and short stroke, which requires far, far less effort. You know, if you're fishing long days or you've got limitations with injuries or things like that, why do you need to be swinging a 15-foot rod around with a long Spey line on it all day? You know, it's just taxing. You come off the water feel like you broke your back, where these short rods are so easy to cast. You still need to have proper technique. You need to know what you're doing with it. But if you're in places like Iceland or destination trips, you're on the water at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't come off while 1. You'll stop for a 2-hour lunch, and you back out 3 while 8, half 8 at night. So they're long days. So carrying a 12.5-foot to 13.5-foot rod is much easier with a shooting head on. Is much easier than carrying a 15-foot rod around. And there's not many lines, 15-foot full Spey lines, that'll accommodate tip system. So if you're going down a pool, you're limiting yourself as well, because you cannot change. I mean, there's certain pools in Iceland where 1 minute I'll be fishing to 1-3 tip, and then suddenly it'll drop off, and I'll just quickly come in, change a tip, and I might have it like T17. So it gives you the ability to quickly make change and cover fish when you know the river.
Right. So it's interesting. So So you're not necessarily using just dry lines. Like in some places, they're just doing surface stuff. Are these fish in Iceland and kind of the UK a little bit different? Is it a lot more below the surface?
So salmon, I mean, if you go, I've been twice this year to Iceland. I went there in early July, and because the fish are just starting to come in, if you go early season, you're likely to get a big influx of big fish coming in on the East Ranga, and everything is fresh as a daisy. I mean, they're coming in with sea lice on. I think the biggest I had were 19 pounds when I was there.
Wow!
But they're more switched on. They've come in. They're more snapping, they're more aggressive, so they'll tend to chase bigger flies. You know, they're aggressive. They want to chase them. They'll chase the fly. When you go later season, they've seen every fly in the book. Do you know what I mean? So they've seen it swung at them a million different ways. You have to try and be a bit clever and show them something different or smaller. I mean, the difference, beginning of the season, our fishing like a fly called the bismo, like a long wing fly, and caught bulk of my fish on that. And then when I've just come back this last time from Iceland, I was catching fish on little Zelda's size, probably around size 12.
Wow.
So a total change. It was colder, so you need to be down deeper because they're hugging the bottom more. Slow swing, try and hold it in front of fish a little bit longer. They're not as accommodating, they're not going to chase it as much.
Yeah, gotcha. How do you hold it in? Talk about that. How would you hold that fly in there longer, or get it to sit there in front of the fish longer?
Yeah, so I just try and manipulate the line on the water, try and hold it in swing longer. But I'm very conscious that I don't put too much slack in the line. I mean, there's an old saying that upstream men is the biggest saviour of salmon.
Yeah.
So, but
really?
Story in Iceland. I had a guide laid on the bank. First time I ever went to Iceland, the guy got out to the back of the truck with some step ladders, and I thought, what the hell's he doing? And he walked down bank and he put these step ladders up, and because it's crystal clear, he was spotting fish in the river. And he shouted to me, Chris, there's 3 fish coming to this pool. So he's laid with his head up at the edge of this pool and made a long cast. And as he swung into the bank, he said to me, add another 50 centimetres. He shouted that, add another 50. So this went on for a while, 4 casts, and then he put his thumb up and he went, it's got it. And I could not feel the fish. And so he went, go again. And I just drew the line back steady, and he took it again, and I hooked the fish. But now, whenever my fly line's coming round and I'm fishing for salmon, I'm constantly drawing back, not stripping fast, but I just keep tension on my line so that if a fish touches it, I feel it straight away. And it's just, every day is a school day, and we're forever learning, and that were a big learning curve for me. So going back to your question, I will upstream mend, but I'm drawing line back in as well. So I'm saying super tight and trying to hold that fly, manipulating the rod tip, flicking the line over and trying to hold that fly where I think fish are going to be lying.
Right. And where are they typically with salmon? Or are they typically laying in kind of a certain part of the swing, or where are they at?
Yeah, I mean, fish love structure. Any fish loves structure. But they'll lay on cliff sides, you know, and you'll often get it when the line's swinging back across the river and the line pulls tight, and then it'll swing up the side of the cliff, and they'll often take it then. But they could be laid mid-river. They could be laid in a little depression or behind a rock or in front of a rock. They tend to hug and structure. The beauty about Iceland is, like you say, a lot of the time you can sight fish.
Yeah, that's right. So that sight fish, so that was in. I mean, the guy that came there with the ladders, is that something that you'd recommend others? Is spotting them,
yeah.
and all that?
I don't think I'd go as far as ladders. I've only ever once seen that guy do it, but you will get guides walking down the bank, and you'll see them flick the. I'll do it myself. Walk down, put my Polaroids on, look, and you can see fish. Not all the time, but yeah. And if you know where they line up and you know what structure it is, then you can adjust your tips or make fly changes. I've actually seen salmon laid in the side of the river in crystal clear water, and I've seen people put the rod tip with a tungsten tip on down into the water, not casting it, literally push the rod tip in the water. And I've seen them let the fly swing in front of the salmon, and I've seen, on a few occasions, I've seen the fly actually slap the salmon's face, and it's not even reacted. And I've seen other times when people have done it and they've managed to get a reaction and hook a fish. But yeah, interesting to see the body language, when they get that fly in front of them.
Imagine embarking on a journey to Alaska, that ultimate destination for adventure seekers. With FishHound Expeditions, this dream can become your reality. Picture yourself amidst the wild Alaskan landscape where the northern lights dance across the sky and you're reeling in some of the biggest rainbow trout you've ever seen. It's an experience that feels like a dream, but with FishHound, it's an adventure waiting to happen. If Alaska is on your bucket list, FishHound Expeditions is the key to unlocking that dream. Visit fishhoundexpeditions.com today and mention that you discovered them through this podcast. That's FISHHOUND Expeditions. Don't just dream about Alaska, experience it with FishHound. It sounds like salmon's something you're really kind of into. Are there other species that get you fired up out there? What else are you chasing?
No, I love all species. I've been to Maldives this year, and where side fishing on flats is, for me, it's amazing. So yeah, in the Maldives, I went out with some guys, and the boat was too big to get right in onto flats, so they dropped us, and we walked onto flats, and we were fishing for a day, chasing triggers and yellow spotted trevally, blue trevally, things like that. It was a bit rough, so we couldn't get out over the breakers to the GT. But yeah, I love side fishing on salt again because it's so explosive. You can see it all happen. You know what I mean? You're not waiting for that knock. You can basically see fish chasing your flies. Yeah,
it's different.
Yeah, and super.
Wow, what's that like? Are you guys just staying out? I mean, how does that look when you're out in the Maldives? Are you out there for like a week?
No, so this was actually... I went on a family holiday with my wife. Well, just myself and my wife went this time. And I just negotiated a couple of days out.
Oh, nice. Good work.
You can't go that far, can you? Not pretty yeah. So, yeah, I'd be up and off early morning. And then, by the time she's got back, I'm nearly back in. Was
it pretty awesome staying there? Was that a pretty amazing area?
Yeah, I've been to Iceland, Maldives. It's a stunning place. I mean, unbelievable fish. There's sharks everywhere, even on beaches, but they'll not allow you to fish from the reefs. So if you want to fish, you've got to sort of book a charter or get somebody to take you to the sand flats. We were fishing off the sand flats. And literally, we'd only just jumped off boat and I saw two yellow spotted trevally off my right-hand side, made a cast. It just strip. It started chasing and coming. And then it turned away. But then I always said to people, spey casting is not just for salmon fishing or trout. Quickly made a snap cast, covered it again and stripped it twice and hooked the fish. And if I hadn't have had the ability to make that quick change using the snap cast, that fish would have been gone. I would have missed it.
Right. That was just a single-hand rod.
Yeah, just a single-handed 9'9" went that one. Yeah.
Yeah. God, that's cool. There's so many opportunities around it. So the chalk streams, I mean, going back there to the kind of the UK, those are still pretty solid, but the challenge there is that it's a lot of private water. That's kind of the biggest challenge.
Yeah, you can get on certain places on these chalk streams, but they are stocked as well. They're not all wild fish on the Test and the Itchin, places like that. Hampshire Way, stunning water. And a lot of it, you don't tend to wade, Dave, which I quite like to be immersed in nature. I quite like having my waders on and being in there. Where these rivers, they're all manicured banks, and you'll fish from the banks. Not on every beat, but on a lot of beats. So, it is nice, but it don't appeal to me like rivers that I can actually wade and immerse myself in. Yeah,
and I wanted to talk a little bit about your work shots in your casting. So does that, maybe describe that a little bit? If somebody was coming in for, say, the two-handed, how does that look? Is that like a day-long workshop?
Yeah, so I've just recently, about last year I did a workshop in Italy. This year I've recently done one for a company called Malin and Green. It's a fly shop in Derbyshire. They've got some water, and we did a full day's spey casting workshop. So I explained mechanics, we go through it all. And then I lead people on as fast as everybody moves at a different pace, Dave. So you might have somebody who really flies on, and then you don't roll them back. but then you've got to make sure that everybody's getting equal attention. And so I tend to start with waterborne anchor casts like snap casts and double spey, things like that. And then with the more advanced casters, I'll have them on airborne anchor casts like splash and go casts like snake roll, and also single spey casts like that. Some casts myself, what I've developed myself as well. So, but every spey cast has its purpose, you know. You just take, for example, let's just take a double spey and a snake roll. Both casts that are designed to be used in downstream wind or a neutral wind if it's a cast that you just like using. Both require limited backspace, and they'll both get you probably 100-degree angle change. But the snake roll is far faster. So I think it's 4/7 faster. So if I were fishing down a river one day, along with yourself, and I were using a snake roll and you were using a double spey, by the time you've made 40 casts, I've probably been 70.
Oh, wow.
So my fly is in the zone far, far longer. That cast offers a lot more stealth because it's a splash and go cast. But the double spey is an easy cast for beginners to learn. And it's a cast that's great at lifting sinking lines, you know what I mean? Yeah. So every cast has its pluses and minuses. And I always say to clients, the more casts you have in your locker or in your toolbox, the more fish you'll cover effectively, the more fish you'll catch. So you can have the best fly box in the world, right? I mean, my garage is full of flies, trout, pike, sole, salmon. But if you can't put fly in zone and present well, you know you're going to struggle to catch fish.
Right. Yeah, and the snake roll is a good, cast. What is, maybe just talk about that a little bit. Maybe we haven't done this, but maybe describe the snake roll a little bit. How would you describe it on, audio? It's
a cast that's designed to make a quick angle change like all spey casts are, and they all require limited backspace. So if you've got an obstruction built behind and you cannot make an overhead cast, the difference between L to spey cast is you can still cover fish. So snake roll, let's just pretend my line's hanging down, it's swung into the bank below me. My rod tip sort of comes back into the bank in a curve, and then it goes out towards the river, and then I'll quickly accelerate it underneath, form a D-loop, the anchor will splash down on the water, and then I'll make a forward delivery. So when I teach it, I always go bank, river, bank, deliver.
Bank, river, bank, deliver.
Yeah, it's hard to see without visualizing it, but it's like painting an E. So you lift around the E to the front, quickly accelerate back underneath the E, and then forward, form your D-loop, and then forward delivery straight out.
Yeah. Is that snake roll? Do you have any videos out there, or there, somebody could take a look?
Yeah, if you go on my social media, I think I've got a Spearworks video up. I think it might be pinned at top. You'll actually see it with a Mackenzie photo shoot, myself, Andrew, and Kirk, and there's all of us on there with single switch and double-handed rods, all doing stuff like that, single spey snake roll.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a lifeline. Do you find yourself, you're at a high level, are you still learning things with the cast, or is that something where you've kind of got it all already, all the knowledge is there?
I just think with fishing and in life in general, every day is a school day, you know what I mean? I mean, I've constantly got a rod in my hand, so I should be on top of my game, but you always, you'll just rediscover something, or you'll discover a way that you think, oh, that worked well, teaching that with that guy or that lady. And you think, oh, yeah, I'll incorporate that more often. So I think you're always learning.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else you'd want to highlight about what you have going throughout the year? Sounds like you're doing a lot of travel. If somebody wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way?
Yeah, so if they message me through social media or the website, I run every year. Next year, I'm just in negotiations with the East Ranger. We're going to do a course to be late June. It's going to be, so that's just before you get into prime fishing for the them rivers out there. And it's going to be a casting work, but it's not just going to be casting. We're going to do, it'll be a residential course, so probably a 4-day course, and we're going to do casting workshops on the morning for a couple of hours until it warms up. And then the guys will go out and the ladies will go out on the water on the East Ranger to try and land a prime Atlantic salmon, but we're going to the guys out there are not just going to go, well, you need to be jump in the water here and you need to fish this. That's where they'll be late. It's going to be a total course from like tying on what knots we'd use, why we'd select what fly rod we're using, why we'd select what lines we're using, fly selection. We're going to cover it all. So anybody who's wanting to improve their spey casting, learn more about how to approach the salmon river, how to fish for salmon, fly selection, etc., stay in a stunning lodge with food that's like out of this world. That'll be a great course. I don't know what price it's going to be yet, but that'll be advertised.
What is the area again?
Oh, that's the East Ranger.
Oh, this is in Iceland, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Drone, yeah. So that'll be a course, and then I'll be running an hosted trip in there 22nd of August to around the 29th. That'll be a 6-7 day trip. And then other than that, there'll be workshops going off in the UK. And I do individual lessons as well.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to book for an individual lesson, whether it be single-handed or double-handed, that's not a problem.
Okay, yeah, it's the East Ranger Lodge, so that's kind of in the southeastern part of Iceland.
Yeah.
Right,
so,
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's something that's going to be new to this year. It's going to be that's going to be early season, that back end of June. But it'll be cheaper than May prime time. But for anybody who's wanted to really take the salmon fishing to another level and think, understand it deeper and how we approach it, that'll be a great course to be on, because the guides are very good out there as well.
Right, yeah, that sounds like amazing. And that's like you're saying, so June is a little bit, or is early part of the season, and then July, like when is the peak in Iceland?
Yeah, I would say around, the Owners Week is 21st, so I would think that's about on prime.
21st of July?
Yeah. But I mean, I was there, I came back 29th of August, and I had a 21-pound, I reckon it were, and that was quite silver. That had only been in days. And we were still catching fish with sea lights on at that time. So you've got a mixture. You've got fish that are starting to colour up and show the tartan pyjamas, the breeding colours, but you've still got fresh runs of fish coming in at that time. But if you do go in June, then that's when, if you're going to catch one, it will be an absolute brand new fish that's coming on the tide.
Right. And is also in June, are you also going to be getting more closer to the surface flies?
Oh, yeah. They'll move for the flight. You can definitely fish further up. I mean, I caught a fish there this year, and I knew I was going to hook up before. I made a long cast, and I saw this bow wave coming through the surface, and I was just waiting for it. And it absolutely nearly pulled rod out of my hand. It was a fantastic take. Because a lot of takes you'll get that are very tentative. They'll just sort of creep up on it, Right. So I use what I call swing tubes. They're only a little plastic, about 10 centimetre tubes. Then you thread if you're using a tube fly, you thread it through the tube fly, and then you put this swing tube on, and then you fasten your hook on, and then you slide the swing tube down over the hook. But it actually sits the hook further back on the fly. So I'm not saying it works every time, but I've definitely seemed to have a better hook-up success by setting the hook further back on the fly.
Yeah. So this is just like a tube fly setup?
It's just, so if you're using a tube fly, imagine you've threaded your line through the tube fly, and then you put it through this little plastic, they're called swing tubes. There's a couple of pounds for about 30 on Amazon or whatever. Push it through that, fasten your hook on, and then just slide the swing tube down onto the where you've tied your line on, and it actually sits the hook further back on your back of your tube. So when they do come up short, the hook's further back.
Right. So that happens coming up short. So what are they doing when they're coming up short on the fly?
I don't know. They're just tentative. Do you know what I mean? Especially early morning as well, if it's cold. At that time of year, early season, they'll come for fly a lot more. But then when you get it back later into the season, early mornings, sometimes you're fishing tiny flies just to get them to take. And then as the day warms up, you might get a belt of fish, bigger flies. And then as it's cooling down again at night, I tend to go back smaller again. It's trying to crack the code on salmon is, I don't think anybody's ever done it.
No.
It's just trial and error, constant, trial and error.
It's always changing. Do you find out there they're also the same runs you're fishing year after year up in Iceland? Is it kind of standard on that, or does it change?
They said that they've not had as good a year this year, but there's still going to be, I think the West Run is at something like 5,000 fish, but the East are probably around 2,500, 3,000 fish caught. But the more they get pretty constant because of ranching policies, Dave. You know what I mean? It's in their interests. That's their business. So they will do everything they can to get fish back in the system.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I compare a lot of the stuff because I know a lot more about steelhead, but we've had hatcheries out here for over 100 years, and there's places where definitely still hatcheries are good, but there's places where it hasn't helped, right? So you have that challenge. I wonder, in Iceland, have they been doing this for a while, and do you feel like it's sustainable over time? Can it build up the wild populations, or is this more just a hatchery like put and take sort of thing?
Yeah, but the problem you've got there is they haven't got a lot of great spawning grounds. So there's only a percentage, not on every river. Some rivers are just natural stocks. But so I think they're working on habitat as well, and they've got other ideas to try and make it more sustainable. So it's just, you don't suffer with silt or things like that, but there's a hell of a current coming down those rivers.
Yeah. Right. There's a lot. Yeah, I'm sure that's a whole nother podcast there just on how that'd be an interesting one to talk about. How are they doing it? What is the plan? Yeah,
I put a short video up and again on social media, and I just took what they do is they release the smolts back into these little inlets at the side of the river. So probably an inlet that you might get 10 trucks in, as big as parking 10 trucks, and they'll have a net over the top and it'll be oxygenated. And you can see fish bouncing around, and then once it's time for them to go, they'll get a digger in and they'll dig the front of the inlet out into the main river, and then they'll be released.
Then they head out to the ocean.
Yeah. Fascinating to see.
That is. So they're basically getting them used to the river system so they know where to come back.
That's exactly. So on this little short video on there, I'm talking to the guy and just go, how many's in the end? He said there were 25,000 in that little pen. And then pens situated up and down river. So when the fish come back, they're all running into different beats of the river. So that means that you've got fish throughout the system. They're not all running into the bottom or all trying to get up to the top. They're scattered through all 9 beats on the river. It's clever, very clever.
Yeah, it is. Cool. Well, I'm going to take it out here pretty quick here, Chris. I just had a little segment we do, which is our Wet Fly Swing Pro listener shout out. And today we're giving a shout out to Ben D. He's in Wet Fly Swing Pro. He's in there. He's down in California and Los Angeles, actually, but he does a lot of traveling as well for work. So he's fishing all around the country. So shout out to Ben. This today is presented by Stonefly Nets, who has a great custom wood landing net that we use on our trips. But I just want to start this off with you. Maybe talk about we talked a little bit about gear, but maybe start there. Are you using with salmon fishing? Are you guys using nets for salmon out there, or is this something where you're just landing by hand?
No, we do use nets, but the bulk of the gillies I'll net fish for you. If I don't carry a net myself. If I were caught up a river and there weren't a gilly nearby, then I would obviously tail the fish. And I try to keep them wet. I try to keep them, in the water all the time. I don't like to bank them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think fish care is a massive thing. So if it takes a long time to catch a fish, long catch, long release, spend a bit of time with that fish and make sure it goes back well.
Yeah. What other gear recommendations are you using? You said you go pretty light, but is there anything like one piece of gear you really love to have out there? But it's pretty standard, right? It's just literally your rod, your reel, your fly. You don't need much else, do you?
No. To be honest with you, I travel as light as I can. If I'm salmon fishing, I've got tippet, nips, and a tape measure, and a material tape measure in my pocket. I literally have one box with hooks, swing tubes, dress flies, and tube flies in the other side. Little tiny box. I think we confuse ourselves with trying to have too many flies. And I have a wallet, and I actually drop that down the back of my waders, and that's got all my tips in. So various tips. And even if I take a bottle of water, if it don't go down my waders, it don't go. That's it. I've got to travel.
Oh, right. So you don't even have you don't have any type of a vest or sling or anything. You got it all in your waders.
No pack, no nothing. No. Super light.
Yeah, I like that. We got a couple of random questions here. I was kind of looking, at the area you fit. You talked about fishing, but you're traveling a lot. What do you think if somebody was coming in to Iceland, where do they start? Is it that you mentioned the app? Like if somebody wants to put together a trip, how do they plan their first Icelandic trip?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested and they want to travel themselves on a hosted trip, if they get in touch with me, I have what I do with my clients. I have a WhatsApp group. So leading into trip, they know exactly everything from clothing, from fly selection, from rods, reels, lines up. So many times, Dave, I've been on trips myself and I've seen other people come in. At the trip, they've just fetched a total wrong kitting. So, I mean, they don't have to go with me, but I think first time, if they're going to spend all that money on a trip, I'd definitely go on an organised trip. Because what you don't want to do is turn up in Iceland with all the wrong gear,
right?
Not have a guide on water, not know where you're fishing, different rivers. I think if they want to do it, and I'm not just saying it to get in touch with me, look other people up, look guides up, and go on an organised trip first, and then if you want to go back and you want to do it yourself, you'll at least have a better idea.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. We've been doing that too. I think that's something that I've been trying to reach out to, the best people we know out in these areas, and then have them put together something and then get a group, that goes out.
Yeah. If you ever want to travel to UK and you want a trip went together, I'll help you with that. And if you want to go to Iceland, just get in touch. Even if it's not with me, I can put you in touch with right people that, you guaranteed having a good trip.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely do that for sure. You mentioned guideline. Is that the line, or what is the fly line you're using for your two-handed stuff?
So the one that I'm using now is it's like a prototype. What Mackenzie's would be is something that we'll have a new line coming out. I've just had a new email. It's going to be a multi-tip line, and it's going to be super, super simple, so that anybody will be able to follow what the tip system. I think it's very confusing. I think double-handed lines, especially more than single-handed lines, is very, very confusing for the end user. And we're going to super simplify it, and we're going to have a line that'll be a kit, and it'll consist of, we aren't giving too much away, it'll be a floating body, and then it'll have a sinking body with it. So if you're trying to slow the fly down, Dave, and you're using a floating body, the fastest piece of water on that river, on any river, is the top part of the river, the surface water. So if you want to slow your fly down, a good way to do it is to use a sinking body and cut underneath it. So we're going to have two bodies, a floating body, a sinking body, and multiple tips so you can adjust depth. Focus for me, speed of fly and swing, depth is paramount when you're salmon fishing. Well, in fishing in general.
Right. So it's going to be a mix. So it's kind of, and will there be an intermediate part of that, or is that kind of, you're simplifying it away from that too?
Yeah, well, but no, I think we'll probably have something like a floating body that all these tips will work on, and they'll take you through upper columns of water. And then if you're getting really deep and you need to slow that body down, I think we're going to go something like, we might go float sink 2, and then these tips will be able to be added onto that. So you'll still be able to travel super light, but you'll have all bases covered.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Well, I think we could leave it there, and I think what we'll do is follow up with you as we get some more interest. I know definitely people have expressed, we've heard a lot about Iceland, but also I think the UK is maybe a destination that, maybe things are going to turn around a little bit with the salmon runs. But like you said, if somebody was going over there, we just had, I know a listener I talked to recently that was heading that way just for vacation, and he was kind of wondering where to go. What do you tell them if you got somebody that's just stopping by? It's probably still the best idea to get a guide, because that's the only way you're going to fish some of these waters.
Yeah, I think if you're wanting salmon fishing, there's a few places in the UK. There's one called FishPal.
Yeah.
If you go on their site, they'll show you what beats is available and what prices they are, and they have catch rates every day. So, like I said to you, a lot of top beats get booked up pretty quick. But you can go on there and you could plan yourself a day. And if you plan a day with them on one of their beats, there'll be a gillie on there. So you could always contact that gillie before and ask what sort of equipment you'd require for a day. And they'll guide you on water anyway, where to fish and what to do. So that's a way around doing it. But The problem with UK is some of the top waters get booked up really fast.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Well, I think we'll kind of leave it there and we'll check in with you if folks have questions. We can send everybody out to flyfishingwithchrishague.co.uk.
Yeah, or on Facebook or Instagram. They can always message me on there if they've got any questions.
Okay. All right, perfect, Chris. Well, I appreciate the time today and shedding light on everything you have going out there. It sounds like you're going to be doing more traveling around in this next year. So we'll keep in touch with you and check back when we can put together some trips out there. And yeah, thanks again for your time.
Yeah, I'd love to help you out if you're looking at coming over or you want to go to Iceland. Just give me a shout. And thanks very much for having me on, Dave.
All right, today's call to action. If you get a chance, check in with Chris on Instagram, see what he has going, check out his website. And if you're interested in a trip to Scotland, to the UK or to Iceland, check in with me and let me know, and we'll look forward to trying to put together that trip in the future. If you haven't already, if you're new or if you haven't followed the show, please do that. It's very simple. Go down your app and just click that follow button. That's the easiest way to get it done. I've got a lot going here. I'm going to be heading out soon on one of our trips, so I've got a lot of work to do this week to get prepared. We're heading over to the Driftless School, and it's going to be a really epic trip. We're traveling across with the four-wheel camper. We're traveling across the country, and it's going to be a fun one. If you're interested in hearing more about the journey, check in with me. Send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, and you can find out more there. Also, just a reminder, Schultz Outfitters, we are doing a trip with Schultz Outfitters Smallmouth Bass. If you want to get involved in this, you can go to wetflyswing.com/smallmouth bass, and you can find out more information there, or you can send me an email anytime. One reminder, too, we are on track to take a little break. As I mentioned, we're on this road trip, so I'm going to be heading out here soon. And so we're going to be dropping down to 2 full-length episodes per week instead of 3. We're going to be doing this for probably a month just because it's just too much work to put it all together. So we're going to be doing that. So Friday there will not be an episode, but there will be one on Monday like normal. And then we'll get back into the swing of things when I get back from this trip. All right. I'm going to get out of here. I hope you have a good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.